Hey everybody, it's Mr. Ray. Today we're going to be talking about musical intervals, and we're going to be training our ears to recognize these intervals by using musical examples from Frozen. Now, I liked the first Frozen movie. It was really good. I thought it was like a good Broadway musical, kids version. But Frozen 2, man, the music is so good. Alright, so before we dive into Frozen, let's learn intervals by taking a look at a C major scale. Now, this isn't a piano lesson, but everybody, whether vocal or instrumental, will benefit from viewing the notes laid out in an order that a piano does. All in an order, lowest to highest. So to find a C, we're going to look at this pattern of black keys. We've got a group of 2, then a group of 3, group of 2, group of 3, and it keeps repeating all up and down the keyboard. So a C is found just before every group of 2. So before this group of 2 black keys, this white key is called C. And the next group of 2 black keys, the white key before it, is also a C. And you'll notice these 2 notes sound similar. And even if we play them together, they sound really good together. So that's because these are an octave apart. Octave is a good musical term that you'll need to know. You'll notice that it starts with OCT, which usually means 8, as in octopus. So that's the same in this case. This note is 8 away. If we call this C number 1, then our C major scale is going to take 8 notes to get to the C again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the distance between this C and this C in music is called an octave. So you'll notice that every C, they sound good together all up and down the keyboard. So from here to here is an octave also. From this C to the next C is an octave, and so on. From this one to this one is also an octave. So if we say this is middle C on the piano, and we go up 1 octave to the next C. Now if we go up to the next C, we're going to call that 2 octaves. Now if we go from this C to this C, we're going to call that 3 octaves. Because every octave, we jumped 8 notes. If you've watched my previous videos on the physics of music, you'll know that the relationship between these 2 notes is going to double the frequency. From this C to this C is going to double the frequency. So we also call this an octave. So let's start with C, and we're going to use a number system to understand the relationship between intervals. Now with our C scale, we're going to go up until we hit 8 notes. So let's call C1. Then we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you'll notice when we get to 8, it's the same as 1. They're the same note, C and C. So let's just quit saying 8, and when we get here, let's say 1 again. So let's do it again, saying the numbers as we play a C major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Now let's go back down, starting on 1. 1, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we're going to keep all of our intervals within this octave from now. So from the first note to the second note, we're going to call that interval a second. Does that make sense? From the first note to the second note, we're going to call that interval a second. So from the first note to the third note, we're going to call that a third. And so on. Here's a 4th. Here's a 5th. Here's a 6th. Here's a 7th. And here's an octave. Let's practice that one more time. Here's a second. Here's a third. Here's a fourth. Here's a fifth. Here's a sixth. Here's a seventh. Here's an octave. So I want you to pay attention as we go along to how the intervals feel to your ear. For example, a major second does not feel that great. Your ears can detect that there's some dissonance. Dissonance is a word that means two things that do not go together. So the C and the D next to it don't go together very well. Whereas if we move up to a major third, that sounds great together, right? That sounds really pretty and happy. In fact, major thirds are really important for building chords. So if we keep going, a perfect fourth sounds very stable and very nice to our ears. A fifth also sounds nice to our ears. It's very stable. A sixth sounds very pretty. Major sixths are used in a lot of piano music because they're so pretty. Let's go to a seventh. And a major seventh is probably the most dissonant of all to our ears. That doesn't sound very good together, does it? And the reason why is from an octave, that seventh is only a half step apart. If we played a B and a C together from here, it's called a seventh. But if we play a B and the note right next to it, that's called a half step. And any half step, when you play them together, sound very dissonant. So let's talk about half steps and whole steps real quick. So when you arrange the keyboard in order from lowest note to highest note, you include all the black notes in between the white notes and you play them all. Every time you go up, that's called a half step. From here to here is a half step. Half steps don't sound good together. So going back to our major C scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a 7 is very dissonant because it's basically the same thing as a half step. Does that make sense? From this C to this C is an octave. So this B is actually only a half step away from a C. That's why there's so much dissonance. So now let's dive into Frozen and let's learn how to recognize these musical intervals while we're listening to music. So in Frozen, there's this one musical line that repeats over and over because it's a theme for when she hears that voice. And they do it in lots of keys. That line is actually called the Dies Irae, and it came from a lot of old music, including operas and classical music pieces. And it's just those four notes. They're kind of ominous, and they've been associated with death for hundreds of years. And Frozen is full of this. When you hear the phrase half step, I want you to think of the first two notes of that phrase. So I want you to remember how that feels to your ear. That feels very dissonant. Great, let's move on to a major second. To review, let's go back to our C major scale and review the numbers associated with it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So if we go 1 and 2 and we play those together, that's a major second. In the song Show Yourself from Frozen 2, we can find a great example of a major second.
Show yourself.
So on the very first chorus of Show Yourself, they're in the key of F sharp. So we're going to start on an F sharp and we're going to go up a major second. As we know, a major second is 2 half steps. So let's go up 1 half step and 2 half steps. Now play those 2 notes together. That's an F sharp and a G sharp, and those together makes a major second. And at the very first chorus in Show Yourself, she does that. Between the words show and your is a major second. Show yourself. So if you remember how that feels to your ear, you can remember a major second. Alright, let's move on to a major third. In the song Reindeers Are Better Than People, we can hear a great major third right at the very beginning of the song.
Reindeers, reindeers, reindeers.
So we're in the key of D, which means it's based on a D major scale. So the first 2 vocal notes in that song are a major third. Reindeers, reindeers. So remember how that makes your ear feel. A major third is that really happy sound. Let's move on to a fourth. And the song Do You Want to Build a Snowman starts with a perfect fourth.
Do you wanna?
Let's go back to our C major scale real quick and play our fourth. And let's count how many half steps a fourth, a perfect fourth is. So starting on C, we're gonna go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. Do you wanna build a snowman? On the word wanna, she sings a perfect fourth. Do you wanna? Listen to how that makes your ear feel. Wanna. That interval feels really good to our ears. So anytime you want to think of a perfect fourth, think of wanna from Do You Wanna Build a Snowman? Do you wanna? So let's go back once more to that scale we do know, the C major scale, and let's play a fifth. Let's count how many half steps it takes to get from the bottom note of a fifth to the top note of a fifth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 half steps. If you start here and you leap 7 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a perfect fifth. For the first time in forever is in the key of F. In the chorus, she sings, for the first time, and right there we get a fifth between the words first and time. First time. That's a really great example from the chorus that's really easy to remember. So if you want to think of a fifth and going down a fifth, start on a note, and then think first time. Let's talk about a sixth now. And in the song The Next Right Thing from Frozen 2, there's a perfect example of a sixth right in the name of the song.
The next right thing, next right, next right, next right, next right.
When she says the title of the song, the phrase is, and do the next right thing. And on the words next and right is where we find the sixth. Next right.
Next right.
Sixths are also very pretty. So to remember how a sixth feels, you can remember the next right interval from The Next Right Thing song. Next right. Alright, let's move on to talk about a seventh. And we find the seventh in the song When I'm Older from Frozen 2, when Olaf's singing. Now Olaf demonstrates a major seventh perfectly, although he doesn't go directly to the seventh, he hits an octave first. In the B section, he sings, growing up. And if you think between grow and up, that's the major seven. We're going to skip the octave because we already know what an octave feels like. And we're going to go to the major seventh. Because that's a really easy way to think of a major seventh, is to go to the octave and then back down a half step. So Olaf unknowingly presented us with the perfect major seventh. See how that makes your ear feel? And now for the interval that feels the nicest to our ears, the octave. We find the octave, in my opinion, the most epic song in all of the Frozen franchise. Into the Unknown.
Into the
When Elsa sings the words Into the Unknown, she demonstrates an octave perfectly on the word unknown. She goes, into the unknown. And on the words unknown, she jumps from this B flat to this B flat, which, as we know, if you go a letter name to the next same letter name, it's an octave. Into the unknown. So when you think of an octave, I want you to think of the very first time she sings Into the Unknown. So there you have it. You've got a musical example from Frozen to remember any of the intervals from the major scale that you want to remember. Thanks for watching. Now go practice.